everybody, and welcome to Life Positive on PromoHomo.TV. I am your host, Nicholas Snow, and Life Positive is one of the newer series on the network. It is spotlighting people living with, impacted by, and or working to bring about the end of HIV and AIDS. And the reason that I started Life Positive as its own series is while I have been an HIV/AIDS activist for decades, and living with HIV myself since 2007, in a lot of my journalism, I wasn't as focused on my activism and on raising issues around this particular issue as I wanted to be. And I also realized that there's still more of a need than ever to keep those issues that we face in the fight against HIV and AIDS at the forefront. There's really a great need for that. And I was really honored to participate in a cover shoot for this annual HIV drug guide of Positively Aware magazine. And I'm also an actor and I do other things. And it was just like a typical intense shoot. We all showed up. Some of them knew each other. It was at a time, it was actually almost precisely 2 months ago today. It was January 18th or the 16th, something like that. It was the 16th, January 16th. And we all got together, we were working, we were wearing masks most of the time, we were outdoors, and the photo shoot ends and everyone says goodbye. And that was not, I wasn't going to have that. I was going to go out of my way to find opportunities to connect further with the wonderful people. And I thought, oh, wow, I'll have them on the show. So that's what I'm doing. And it's a very powerful episode coming up. So the photos, by the way, are by Mark Harvey. You saw his name in the opening credit sequence. And the feature story is written by my first guest tonight. He's coming up in a few minutes, Rick Guasco. And I'm reading from the magazine. He writes, "From the AIDS epidemic of the 1980s through today's COVID pandemic, people living with HIV have endured isolation in one form or another while reaching for community to find support, information, and hope. We might be alone, but we're also together." That was the theme behind the Los Angeles photo shoot for the cover and additional photos of the 26th annual HIV Drug Guide, which brought together people living with HIV, both recently diagnosed and long-term survivors, and care providers in the HIV field, all passionate about their work, and some living with HIV as well. They each make a unique contribution, finding a place in the communities they serve. That is how we came together, and that was Rick's take on Apart But Together. And I personally have dealt a lot with isolation and loneliness and was grateful for the opportunity to connect. So that's what's coming up. But before we get into the meat of the show, for their support of my show, I want to thank DAP Health. I'm coming to you live from my home studio in the affordable housing complex of DAP Health in Palm Springs, California. One of their value statements is "We welcome all people, period." Also want to give a shout out to 849 Restaurant and Lounge, a great restaurant here in Palm Springs, for their long-term support. And I'm a proud media sponsor of the LGBTQ Community Center of the Desert. Their mission, creating vibrant community by helping LGBTQ people along their way. And I'm also a media sponsor of Palm Springs Pride. You can find 4 complete Pride parades at PromoHomo.TV. And for their support in amplifying my network across the Twitterverse, I want to thank the hashtag #ILoveGay campaign. And I also want to give a shout out to media partners KGay1065 Palm Springs, the hashtag #ILoveGay Palm Springs podcast, and GayDesertGuide.lgbt. By the way, you can ask your smart speaker to play KGAY, and it will, wherever you are in the world. If you're having merch envy, you don't have to be envious. Just use the merch link at PromoHomo.TV or go directly to Amazon. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. And on Facebook, during the live videos, you always see a bell symbol. Ring the bell and you'll be reminded of future broadcasts, and follow me on social. So This show has sponsors, but I also have the PromoHomo.TV superstars. And those are people who have voluntarily subscribed to the free content. It's free across social media, but they've voluntarily subscribed for as little as $10 a month. And for people that do that on or before April 24th, 2022, I'm devoting my 60th birthday party to celebrating all of you. You're invited to the party in real life or virtually here in Palm Springs on a Sunday afternoon. And here are some of the people who have stepped up to support PromoHomo.TV.
And I just can't get enough of your energy. I just can't get enough. You're the light in the middle of the night, and I just can't get enough. Oh, 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 oh.
You gotta love them, and I do. Just for housekeeping, I'm checking out Guest in the Green Room. And Danielle, I see you're in the green room, and I can tell that I don't see your video. So I'm going to use the private chat feature. If you look in the private chat, you'll find a link to instructions. So there's plenty of time for you to reconnect to the studio because I don't want to miss talking to you. But everyone else I can see is successfully connected. They're in the green room. And first up, let's bring on to the show Rick Guasco. Hi, Rick. Welcome to the show. It's so great to see you.
Thank you, Nicholas. It's good to be here.
It was fun having a little photo shoot reunion in the green room before the show. And I was sorry to have to cut everyone off to put them backstage. But you were remarking before we went on the air about the group of people that you assembled for that photo shoot.
Well, I think they assembled themselves. Everyone answered the casting call that I put out, and some of the people had gotten word secondhand that I was looking for people to photograph for the cover of our annual HIV Drug Guide, and so it was sort of like a potluck of sorts. But as people were emailing me and telling me a little bit about themselves and their interest in being part of the photo shoot, I was starting to see that this was looking to be a very interesting group of people, and then to see them in person that Sunday morning, it was like, what an incredible bunch of standout people I lucked into. So as you'll see when we're talking, they're just fantastic, and I can't say enough good. The feelings that what I was experiencing, that feeling was palpable during the photo shoot, and I think it comes through in the pictures that Mark shot.
Oh, and they're really fun, energetic photos. It was a joy. So for people that do not know, Positively Aware has been around for almost 30 years, and it's among the most trusted sources of HIV treatment and advocacy news. It is a national voice for amplifying the concerns and resource needs for people living with HIV across the U.S. Your magazine provides accurate, up-to-date treatment information for people living with HIV/AIDS and their caregivers. You also cover all of the most important medical conferences And the magazine serves as an educational tool for HIV caregivers and helps to provide their clients and patients with the best treatment information available. And no surprise, the magazine is also read by influential HIV researchers and policy makers. And my primary care physician at DAP Health, Dr. David Morris, actually says that he keeps this around throughout the year.
Yeah, actually, the HIV Drug Guide, I've got one too, is a resource that people use and ask for throughout the whole year. So this is something that people keep and depend on. In fact, when I was diagnosed with HIV back in 1992, Positively Aware was one of 3 publications that was handed to me, and I was simply told, good luck. So Positively Aware is something very personal for me.
All right, so one of the things I don't know is, what is Tpan?
Test Positive Aware Network, that's a mouthful, was the name of the organization that got started in 1987. Our founder was a young gay man who had just discovered that he had HIV and didn't know where to turn to for resources and information. So he put out a classified ad in one of the gay bar rags, and 16 people answered that ad, met in his living room, and that's where Tpan was born. And from there, it turned into an organization to share information and support. So I like to say that Positively Aware is the expression of Tpan's dual mission to provide information and support to people living with HIV and to those who care for people living with HIV.
I have known of the magazine for a long time, and one of the downsides of the pandemic, among many downsides, like there's one, is that I wasn't in the doctor's offices where I was seeing the magazines, and now that we have access to the world again, which is fantastic. I'm putting up the website address right now for Positively Aware. Is there, because I'm going to move on to all of the different, I'm going to keep you for a little while, so don't run anywhere, but is there anything you want to particularly say that I have not evoked with a question to set us up also for these wonderful conversations I'm about to have?
Sure. First off, anybody can get a copy of not only the drug guide, but they can subscribe to Positively Aware for free. All you have to do is go to that URL, go to positivelyaware.com/subscribe, and you can get a free subscription, have the magazine sent. It comes out 6 times a year, and then we do a 7th special issue. What I like to say is that at Positively Aware, the product we have to offer is hope. Hope in the form of information to empower our readers for a better tomorrow. Because we believe very much in information and self-empowerment. And you get to self-empowerment by having information that you can trust and depend on.
I love that. I just love bringing up the cover large again, too. I have to say something. I don't know if any of my other guests will relate to this, but when you see this cover photo, it's fantastic. And I'm also in PR and marketing, so the one thing that I notice is that I'm below the fold, as they would say. So when you open it up, there I am. And that was my higher power having a great time with me. Because I have been accused many times of exploiting my HIV status for my own fame and fortune, which isn't true, and I don't really care what other people think. But I just had to laugh at that. It was a joy to be involved in the project, and I'm just playing fun that I'm not above the fold. Really, no issue about that. But I think it's funny, and I actually was kind of delighted by that fact. And I do see Danielle in the green room. She wanted to know. I do see her. So I I did know for a fact that three people were not going to be able to join us today, and I can see that there are perhaps some others that aren't joining us as well. So I've actually queued up the some close-up photos of the three people that aren't joining us because I want to give them some screen time. So I'm technically doing that right now. So the first person I'm going to bring up is good old Mally. So
Oh, yeah.
she has a cold, but I want to share your words from the magazine, Rick. In 2011, Mallory Mally Jenna Robinson was studying for a double bachelor's degree in biology and history in Montgomery, Alabama, when she collapsed at the restaurant where she worked. 2 weeks later, she learned she was living with HIV. Quote, I was completely overwhelmed as a then 21-year-old black trans woman, but I was determined to not let the diagnosis deter me from living my best life, she says. Today, she advocates for women of all trans identities and is a member of the Los Angeles County Commission on HIV. Quote, as a black trans woman who has been living with HIV for over 10 years, I just want to say it's okay to be nervous and overwhelmed, she says, but dig deep and find that determination and tenacity to survive and thrive so you too can motivate and inspire others. And boy, did she motivate and inspire all of us at the shoot. I know that all of us would agree. Her energy really transformed that day.
Mallory was a standout among standouts. I mean, everybody in that shoot, including you, Nicholas, what is such a presence on your own, and everybody shines. But Mallory was sort of like a gravitational force on her own.
She was living it.
She
I
was
forget
definitely
what.
living it.
Yeah, which I absolutely loved. So, also unable to join us, but I definitely wanted to give her some screen time, is Danielle. And in your words again, quoting her,
Oh,
quote,
excuse me, Nicholas.
yes?
You've got Andrea
Oh, I mean Andrea.
up on the
Excuse me,
screen.
Andrea.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Andrea. Andrea, forgive me. I'm doing 25 things at once. Yes. It was 1987, and Andrea DeLange didn't fit the type who would have HIV. She had swollen lymph nodes, and her new doctor was trying to rule out possible causes. A cancer screening 3 years earlier had turned out negative. Quote, my doctor never thought I could be HIV positive when I got the biopsy because I didn't fit the stereotypes of who was HIV positive, and he also didn't know about my past history with the boyfriend, she says. The boyfriend, an injection drug user, had turned her on to crystal meth, telling her that she needed to lose weight. The relationship lasted from 1981 to 1985, but she was already in another abusive relationship. Quote, starting a year before I was diagnosed, he treated me like a leper after I told him my status, she says. Quote, I let him live with me and treat me that way for another 2 years because I was so unempowered and thought I'd never be in a better relationship, close quote. Today, DeLange has been happily married for more than 19 years, quote, to an HIV negative guy who totally loves and accepts me, HIV and all, she says. What a happy ending to, we all have many happy endings to share.
Yeah, and again, hers is another story of self-empowerment.
It is. And because you've been involved with the magazine for a long time, you know people from all walks of life who have dealt with HIV and AIDS.
Yes, a great number of people from all walks of life, different experiences, and in some ways, it's been a privilege to get to meet people who I otherwise would have never known and such good and inspiring people. And the one thing that they and we have in common is this virus.
You know, sometimes I have to, even though I've been living with HIV since 2007, sometimes I have to remind myself that, oh, yeah, this is something I'm dealing with. And finally, the other person that I knew would not be joining us today is Jose Magana. And as you write, Rick, Jose Magana's love of helping people helped him to overcome stigma. He learned of his HIV status about 6 years ago while getting tested to get onto PrEP. Quote, I told my sexual partner and they did not want anything to do with me, unquote, he says. It took me a year of therapy to learn to love myself regardless of my status, whether people choose to accept me or not. Since then, I decided to educate and share my story with others to get rid of HIV stigma, unquote. At 39, public service has always been part of Jose Magana's life. He's been in the Army National Guard for 17 years, having spent over a year and a half on deployment assisting hospital workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. He's now a community organizer for the Wall Las Memorias project focusing on substance abuse, mental health, and facilitates a virtual group for people living with HIV that meets every Wednesday night via Zoom. Quote, I love to help people in the community that I'm a part of, unquote. He says everyone has a different story to tell, and it is important to share those stories so that others can learn and grow from them. So another really, really powerful story.
And that last comment that he says, I think says it all, that people learn from hearing stories of other people's experiences, what those people have learned and what those people have accomplished. And we learn by example. And these stories are examples of self-empowerment.
They are completely. So thank you, Rick. And I wanted to keep you on as I read your words about the people that cannot be with us today. Is there anything you would like to stay in conclusion?
Oh, just, I can't say enough that information, and that's what Positively Aware provides. Information is the key, the beginning to self-empowerment, to getting a handle on your situation. Once you learn more, HIV becomes less scary.
Definitely.
So,
Definitely.
and we're living in a time where there are a lot of good and effective HIV treatments. There's no cure yet, and quite frankly, the medications are not without side effects sometimes, but those vary from person to person, and those treatments are better now than they've ever been. Anybody diagnosed today with HIV has the potential to become a long-term survivor and live to hopefully see the day when there is a cure.
I'm with you on that, and we're all in this together. And I want to really, really thank you.
Sure.
Since you're here, I'm going to leave you here,
Okay.
and I'm going to welcome Damone. Hi, Damone.
Hey, Damone.
Hello.
And I'm going to say goodbye to you, Rick, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you again, Nicholas. Have fun tonight.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So, Damone, thank you for your patience. And those of you in the green room, I just want to let you know I'm going to go to Carlos, Freddie, Dr. Alicia, and then Danielle. And I do see you again, Danielle, but if you disappear again, I'll let you know. So, Damone, because I have you here in front of me, I don't need to read your story in the magazine, and I'd love for you to tell me how it is you are personally connected to the fight against HIV and AIDS.
So for me, growing up, I've always had a compassion to do more and to help others. And so, but the story changed back in 2007 when I was diagnosed with HIV. And so 1 year after being told that I had HIV, I lost my job, not due to HIV, but other political stuff due to the job. I started volunteering back in Jamaica around HIV/AIDS policy for people living with HIV to be more involved to ensure that others like myself would get opportunity, even creating opportunities for myself because it we were way backward in Jamaica. And so my thing was I want my voice to be heard, but I also just wanted to be heard from the background by influencing the policies that exist in Jamaica. And so that's a couple of years later, here am I still actively working in the field and doing my best to help others and ensuring that my experience is not the same as others who's coming after me.
In Jamaica, when you became involved with the issue on a policy level, is part of the reason you wanted to be in the background because of the stigma that we face when we are public, and the fact that you were in an environment where there was indeed and is indeed a lot of stigma?
Yes, definitely. Stigma discrimination. It was very bad because when I was diagnosed, I had a job, I had insurance, and you can go anywhere you want to get a doctor's visit. And so when I lost my job, all that went with it. And so then I realized that the only place I could be heard was through that platform. And so because of stigma, I personally stayed away from getting any treatment, from getting any care. Because back then too, the access to medication that we had, people were taking more than 2 pills per day. And so it was I was fearful, I was scared, I didn't want to face and I didn't want to encounter it. And so that's why I stay in the background. And so I didn't want to die. And so I think it was best for me just to remain quiet and stay in the background.
Yes, someone on the show today, I can't attribute the quote to them directly, but they talked about how being out of the closet, living with HIV, is a privilege, and I had to think about that. And the reality is, you didn't have that privilege in Jamaica. You didn't have the structure around you where you would have been protected.
Yes, certainly that it was not there. I had to, because my safety was important. I had to make sure that I am safe. I have to make sure that I can survive. And so, as best as possible I can be, I had to hide that part of me. And so it was not easy because you could not get the help that you need. You could not get the services that you need. And even when I was accessing those services or those help, I had to change my story. I had to make up a story. I had to tell something different so that it doesn't look so bad, so that it doesn't look so terrible, so that I can get some help that I needed at that time.
In the magazine, you say, I decided I want to live because there is so much more to gain. Today, I thrive above HIV.
Yes.
What inspired you to want to live?
So I think it was 4 to 5 years after I realized that w- I was keeping this a secret because I didn't want to die. But at the same time, I noticed that if I don't do something about it, I may die. And so this is like 4 or 5 years afterwards, and I made up in my mind, and so this is something that people living with HIV has to come. You have to make up in your mind that you want to start treatment and that you want to take care of yourself. So I made up in my mind that I want to live and I don't want HIV to control me. And so I said, no matter what the stigma that I'm going to face, I'd rather face those stigma than not getting the care and treatment that I needed. And so I took that bold step to go ahead and go to the doctor. It was a hard thing to do. It was painful, it was sad, but at the same time, my health and my life was more priority at that moment. And so I took that necessary step to push myself to seek the care that I wanted. And even when I went, I still wasn't getting the care that I needed. And so I remember I was referred to a dermatologist who gave me prescription for 30 days for a skin condition. And then when I went back to the dermatologist, she asked me that question: Are you in care? And do you want to start your treatment? I said, no, I'm not in any care. And yes, I want to start treatment. But I also had a doctor's appointment 6 months in 6 months' time, because that was the timeline you could get a doctor's appointment for HIV care. And so she said, you know what? If you want, you can do your care with me. You can do it right here. And I was like, wow, that's wonderful. It was a perfect opportunity. So maybe it was a hidden blessing that I had the skin condition to go to a dermatologist who was able to become my primary care doctor, to be able to give me my treatment and my care support there. And so that's when I started my care and my treatment. I'm like, this feel good, this feel better. I was able to feel alive because I was down to 125 pounds. So it was
Okay.
great.
All right, I just have one more question
Sure.
for you. So I know from a conversation in the green room before the show that you wanted to track down the copy of the magazine because your mom is coming to visit, and you now are in the LA metropolitan area, by the way. So I'm taking it that you want to show the magazine to your mom, which leads me to think that she knows about your HIV status and the work that you're doing. Is my assumption true? And how does it feel to have a loving and supportive mom who was under the same cultural influences as many of the people that hate and despise you?
Right. It was not an easy task. And what I can say is one of the things that I've been doing back in Jamaica when I used to live there was I create my own nonprofit organization called Healing with Hope. And that's how working with the churches to kind of use it as a platform to be my voice, but not my voice. And so it was kind of my cover. And so at this point in time, I shared with my sister, I shared with my family, and so it's really a blessing. And at this point in my life as well, I'm living for me. And so you have to accept me for me. You have to accept me for who I am and where I am. And so I've learned that no matter who you are, if you can't accept me, I will not tolerate, those negativity, because the negativity will bring me down and make me depressed and make me sad. I don't want that. And so I'm thrilled and I'm excited and I'm happy to know that, I have my family support, all of them with me. And so, because one of the things that I've learned in my Jamaican culture is that no matter where you are in life, if you're down, family will always come to your rescue. Even if you don't agree with them or anything like that, they will always come to your rescue. And so that's something that I've noticed, that I've seen with them. And definitely I'm sharing it because I want to make sure that my story is being told and they can see me and know that I'm thriving beyond this. This doesn't control me, because there is a when you talk about somebody living with HIV, they create this perception of somebody suffering, somebody, of sick, just looking sick or looking pale and all those things. No, I want to create that you can live. People are living with HIV and they're thriving and they're being successful. They're living their life and they can live many years to come. So yeah.
Well, that's beautifully stated, Damone, and I'm very inspired to know you. And I appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you. It's my
So
pleasure to be here.
stay where you are because I'm going to bring on Carlos next. And because Carlos was giving you snaps, Carlos Moreno. Hi, Carlos. Oh, Carlos, you're on mute. You're on mute.
My
There you
bad.
go.
Hi.
We
So,
love Carlos.
oh, so
Yeah.
you guys know each other then?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't clear who knew each other before that photo shoot. I was meeting every single one of you, including Rick, for the first time. So,
Yeah.
but I knew some of you knew each other, and I just wanted you, Damone, to know that Carlos was giving you snaps. I can barely snap, but he was giving you snaps.
While he was owning the photo shoot to embarrass all of us.
No, 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 no. we were all shining.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm gonna let you go. You don't have to leave. Whoever is still here at the end of the show, I'm gonna put us all on screen, Brady Bunch style, just so you know.
Okay.
So if you want to hang out for that moment, you can. But thank you for being here, Damone.
Thank you.
So hi, Carlos.
Hi.
So once again, I have the opportunity of having you in person, so I don't have to read your about you. How are you personally connected to the fight against HIV and AIDS?
Well, thank you so much for having me and for having all of us. It was so great to meet you at the shoot, and it was such a fun time to be there. My connection to HIV is, well, you said personal connection, and I thought about that, and like, yeah, I guess I do have a personal connection, just being a person living with HIV. So that is how it, I guess, affected me personally, is like me and my person.
Well,
Another way that it's
the reason I'm asking everybody what is your connection is because not everyone on the show is living with HIV. Some people living with
right.
HIV aren't out about it. Some of you have disclosed your status in the magazine, some haven't. So, and this show is inclusive of all of the above. So I'd love to give you the opportunity
Yes.
about how to answer that question.
Yeah, and so that was the first thing that came to my mind. The second thing that came to my mind, how it affected me personally, was that um, after my diagnosis and getting more involved with AIDS service organizations and just the fight for the cause, I realized how much of an impact that this disease was having on my community. Not only because I'm a gay person, and so it's heavily affected the LGBT community, but also the Latinx community. And so those were other ways that it affected me personally outside of it affecting me, my person, if that makes sense.
So what it completely makes sense, and I am listening to you, but I'm also focused on the knowledge that I have that you basically came out in a very public way during a concert in probably one of the more liberal cities in a very conservative state, Tucson, Arizona, where I was born, by the way, in Tucson. Um,
Wow, that's awesome.
I grew up in Flagstaff. I didn't really spend time in Tucson, but you, how how did you tell your friends and coworkers on stage during a concert? How was this part of that night? Your story.
Well, it had all started because we were gearing up for our summer show, and the show was called When I Knew, and it told the stories of chorus members through story and then through song that followed the story that we would perform after. And so all these people were submitting their stories, about coming out to their families, about being gay, or, all of these other different obstacles that they've had to overcome. And at the time, this was in 2015, I was 24, and having been diagnosed at 19. So I had been in the closet for almost a little over 5 years, almost 6 years at that point. And I had uh, an experience with another young guy, who after I disclosed to him through text, that he told me that he had vomited, and I just didn't know how to. I didn't know what to do. I was just like, I never want to do this again. I never want to have to disclose to anyone again. I just want to be out about my status, and I don't want anyone to have to ask me about it. And yeah, I just never wanted to go through that horror again. So um, I decided to submit my story to my chorus director, and it was also coming out to him too, because he didn't know either. And so he read the story, and he asked some other chorus members if they also had similar experiences as well. So he actually chose my story and the story of two other individuals who are also in the chorus to share their story about living with HIV on stage. So it's the big night where it's opening night. I invite all of my friends and family, which at the time, not a lot of my family members knew that I was gay. But I invited them to a performance, and so they're like, the gay men's chorus of two, like what is it? What is this about? So it's kind of coming out twice. But I invited all of my friends and family. I at the time had used like that Facebook invite thing. So we did it 2 nights in a row, and honestly, it was the most terrifying, but also the most liberating thing that I have ever done. So it was roughly a 3-hour show, and we were up in the first 5 minutes. So, and then there's an intermission. So, I sort of like hit everyone with the news, and then they had to sit through, a 2.5-hour show and sort of process that information. So it was
Oh gosh.
it was intense. It was intense.
Well, I bet you though the experience of doing it the second night for you was personally very different than the first night.
Well, yes, because the second
News
show
travels.
Yeah. Well, the second show is the show that I invited my family to because it was matinee.
Oh.
So
so that was even more uncomfortable.
It was the Sunday matinee, and that's when my grandparents came, and like aunts and uncles, and my dad and his girlfriend, my mom and her husband. So yeah, it was pretty intense. And after the show, when you go to a show and you sort of meet the cast afterward, you greet everyone, after the show in the lobby and stuff like that. And so that's when I got to talk to all my family members. But it was a way for me, like, because for about almost 6 years, I was like, how am I going to tell everyone? Is it going to be around, the Christmas dinner table? Or like, I don't want it to be something that we are going to be crying about. I don't want them to worry about me. So I took the stage performance as a way to be like, look at what I've turned it into, and like, look how, look at the support that I have from all my chorus family. And, by that point I had been living with it for almost 6 years, and like, you haven't noticed anything different about me. So it was just finding a way to tell them that where I was proud instead of, like scared.
Okay. I see that actually you are the person that mentioned the quote about privilege that I referred to earlier. You're quoted as saying, not everyone gets the chance or has the privilege to be out about their status or be a community advocate. Oh, and your pronouns are he and they?
Yes.
Okay. They acknowledge. But no, the rest of us do what we do because we love and honor you and carry you with us. I just want to cry, actually, when I hear that, because I wouldn't be living the life I am today if it wasn't what I learned from people who were living with and dying of AIDS in the 1980s. They totally transformed the trajectory of my life by teaching me the value of every moment and the value of the expression of one's truth.
Absolutely. And I don't think that I would have been able to stand on the stage and do that if I didn't have the thoughts or just, I kept my peers, some of the people who I knew in support groups and all that stuff, I kept them with me on the stage that night. Because mostly everyone I knew was not out about their status either. So I sort of took, like, it wasn't just really about me at that point. It was everyone in my community who wasn't able to be out. And it was, I at least, one face, one voice can try to be that for other people.
Well, you have a beautiful story, Carlos. Is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I really just give so many props to Rick for bringing the whole group together. And Rick has been someone who I've followed since like 2016 or 2017. And have been inspired by his work and through everything with A Day with HIV. And I've got to meet Rick for the first time at, I think, one of the USCA conferences, and just, see him in his element at the booth and like talking about the magazine and all that stuff. And so it's, I'm really grateful and thankful that he, was able to make this magazine shoot cover happen. And and now I know a whole new set of people that, well, a lot of them I knew from the commission, but the few of you that I had never met before, now we are, sort of bonded in that way. And it was awesome. A photo shoot on Melrose Ave in Los Angeles. Like it was cool. It was cool.
It certainly was, and that actually screams out for me to show this again. Yay! There we are.
And let me tell you, I don't remember. I think the photographer put us all in, a certain order, but having Mallory right there, front and center, with that red dress and that fierce pose, it was perfect.
Yes. She was living for it. Thank you, Carlos. Stay where you are because I'm going to bring Freddie on. I love this transition of, hi, Freddie. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. I did the same. I had the same entrance as Carlos with the mute.
Oh, that's fine. I love that. Now, do you two know each other?
No, but we met that day.
Yes.
And have you communicated since that day?
We have not. No, I'm sort of rogue on social media and stuff like that. So I'm kind of reclused.
Okay, well, you're seeing each other again right now, which was my goal, connecting people. So, Carlos, thank you for being on the show. If you want to hang out for the Brady Bunch moment at the end, you're welcome to, but no pressure to do that.
Thank you so much, Nicholas.
It's been an honor talking to you
again, Carlos.
Yeah, you as well, Freddie.
For everyone backstage, I'm taking people the order in which they connected to the studio. And Dr. Alicia, you're up next, followed by Danielle. So, Freddie, the first question, by the way. If you could come up closer or put the top of your computer there, that's fantastic. I am the director, while I'm also the host. No control issues here. So, that's a joke. You can laugh at me. What is your connection to the fight against HIV and AIDS?
I am an advocate. I work in HIV treatment and prevention. I identify as a gay male. And I feel like my mission is to, my personal mission and goal in life is to connect others with resources. I grew up in a single parent home here in the inner city of Los Angeles, what is now, I guess, considered East Hollywood. And, oftentimes had to seek out resources at the church, etc. And so I feel like I owe a lot to my community, and identifying as a gay male and the perception that had an impact on my life. My mother lost a really great friend to AIDS in 1990. She worked with him and they had a really great connection. And I think she had that fear. I'm sure every parent knows, and she had the hunch that I was gay. And, it was kind of always embedded in me. And I didn't want to live that constant fear. And so when I went to college, as a pre-med, I became active in clubs around campus and also within my fraternity. And I often would advocate and talk about sexual health and the importance of men's health and using condoms. And it's where it really sparked my interest for this field. Oftentimes I had fraternity brothers that would come to me and say, hey, can you take me to that clinic that you always speak of? And I always offered during meetings to, if you've never gone and you're scared, I'll go with you and I'll sit through the process. And I had the privilege of doing that for about 3 or 4 people. And, to see your advocacy firsthand is extremely rewarding. And so this is my how I connect with HIV and STI preventions and treatments.
I wish I had remembered to ask everyone else, but how did you end up on the cover of the magazine? What was your connection to being invited that day?
So I work for UCLA at the Center for Clinical AIDS Research and Education, or the CARE Clinic. And one of my coworkers writes for the magazine, and she sees my passion, and they had asked for, so she nominated me, and she told me, I think that you should reach out to Rick. And I had worked with Rick at a previous project for the care center. And so he invited me to come out and just really share my passion with you all.
Do you mind, this is the journalist in me, do you mind telling me the years in which you were advocating for safer sex in a college setting? What years we're talking about?
Oh my God. Okay. You're trying to date me. I did undergrad in 2000 to 2005 at Cal State Northridge.
All right. So the reason that I asked that question is because I have a follow up. So safer sex has changed a lot because now treatment is prevention. A lot of people watching this show will know what that means, but I'll give my take on it, and you can correct me or add, and any future guests who are coming on can correct me or add. But, you know, in the past, when someone became HIV positive, there was a protocol, and you didn't even go on medications until your CD4 count hit a certain level. And then the science evolved, and the medicine evolved, and then ultimately the scientific community was able to prove that an HIV positive person who's successfully treated on an antiretroviral medication becomes what is referred to as undetectable. So I, as an undetectable person living with HIV, it's scientifically impossible for me to transmit HIV. And they knew that along many years before we were allowed to say it loudly. And now we also have PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis, in which someone that knows they are HIV negative can take a one pill a day. Actually, there's different variations of PrEP, but the point is you can take the pill as prescribed, and generally within 2 weeks of being on PrEP, that person is scientifically protected against becoming HIV positive. Have I described PEP and PrEP? We didn't talk about PEP, but have I described PrEP and undetectable in a way that you agree with and makes sense? And is there anything you want to change or add?
No, there's definitely been some changes, as you mentioned, from the time that I was talking about sexual health in my undergrad years to what now prevention is today. You mentioned a pill. There's also long-acting injectables that work as equally as effective because there's people that aren't adhering to their medication, and having to take a daily pill becomes burdensome for some people. Like myself, I'm not good with taking pills. I have to take, my daily vitamins, and even then I struggle. I have an alarm. So there's definitely other options out there, and it's changed, and it continues. Science continues to change and evolve, and that's the line of work that I do. I work in clinical trials. But I think that sexual health and prevention has definitely changed within the last 20 years, where it was just condoms. And I always had a bag of condoms. I would take them to chapter meetings and etc. to make sure that, everyone was comfortable with the idea and concept of using a condom. And now it's based on risk behavior.
Exactly. Is there anything you want to add about your personal connection to this work or your professional role that we haven't talked about?
No, I mean, I think you've hit it on point. My passion comes from being able to connect resources to disproportionate communities. And I, as an inner city person and who identifies as a person of color and a minority, LGBT, I think that I need to advocate for my community, whether it's prevention or treatment. And I love the work that I do, and continue to work with amazing people. One of my colleagues is going to come on shortly, Danielle, and all the great work that she's doing, and she's amazing. And so I love what I do, because you're able to see the results firsthand when you're talking to people and you hear stories like Mr. Thomas, Damon Thomas. I want to make sure that no one ever has to go through something like that, and is able to live comfortably in their own skin, regardless of their status.
Well, it's an honor to meet you, to have met you briefly that day, and to be able to have a longer conversation with you now. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Stay where you are, because I'm doing that same sort of bring on. So, Dr. Alicia Moorhead, thank you for your patience.
Hello.
Doctor, can I call you Alicia?
Yeah, that's fine.
And do you know Freddie?
No, we met that day.
Okay, well, say hello again.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to
And
see you as well.
Freddie, I'm going to take you off camera, but you can stay around for the Brady Bunch moment if you want to. But thanks again. So thank you for your patience, Alicia. I really appreciate it. And I'm impressed with everyone's story, especially yours. And I would just love for you to share what your connection is to the fight against HIV and AIDS.
Thank you so much for having me, and it was great talking to you at the photo shoot. My journey with working in HIV started in college about like 15 years ago. I took a class. I was a human biology major. I knew I wanted to be a doctor, either that or do like biomedical research. And I took a class on HIV and AIDS and the global impact of it. And, the professor of the class, he was an HIV researcher. He did work in different countries, and he exposed us to different writings from people who either had HIV or worked in HIV. And so I got more interested in it. And I started working in his lab, actually. He did some research on the virus and looking at different mutations of the virus. So I just started that as a kid, basically doing little pipettes in the lab. And then after that, a couple years later, I went to medical school. And I got a chance actually to work with a professor at Charles Drew, which is where I did medical school, Charles Drew University / UCLA. So Professor Cynthia Davis, I worked under her. She does a lot of very impactful public health HIV research. And I got a chance to actually develop a project of my own under her supervision and her mentorship, and interview different people throughout South and Central LA. So like South Los Angeles, downtown LA, and talk to them about their knowledge about HIV, and also their lives, their moods, trying to see if they had depression or not. And it was a great research study because we were looking at depression rates among Black and Latinx people in South and Central LA, and seeing if there was a difference according to HIV status. Like, were people living with HIV, did they have more problems accessing, socioeconomic related things like housing or transportation? And did that have an impact on their mood, or did their status have an impact on their mood? And we actually ended up finding that there was no difference according to HIV status in depression rates. Everyone was depressed because everyone was dealing with similar socioeconomic issues where we were interviewing people. So it was really interesting, actually. That's how I met Danielle, who invited me to the shoot. But after med school, I went to residency in San Francisco, and in San Francisco they have a robust HIV program, especially where I was working in the San Francisco General Hospital. So I got the chance to be mentored by more doctors up there who were doing different trials on HIV treatment and prevention. And I went to a conference on HIV and learned more about pre-exposure prophylaxis or PrEP. And I saw all the disparities that were impacting the U.S. at the time and still are. Basically, how HIV, the HIV epidemic has greatly impacted the Black and Latinx populations, but not a lot of us are taking PrEP. And so when I saw that, staggering statistic that they gave at the conference, I wanted to learn more about PrEP and see how, I could increase PrEP awareness and access among people who, may be at risk for HIV or may be interested. And especially as a primary care doctor, doing her training in San Francisco, I wanted to learn more about prevention because that was my job in general, prevent diabetes, high blood pressure, etc. So I wanted to add that to my repertoire, and I felt like all primary care doctors should know how to prevent HIV as well as any other condition that we screen for. So I, continued. I did some work and research on PrEP when I was in residency, and then I came back to LA for a research fellowship. And there I did some focus groups and qualitative research, like longer interviews with Black women to learn more about their ideas on sexual health and HIV and STI prevention. And so, I wanted to really spread awareness and figure out like what was the general knowledge of HIV and PrEP and HIV prevention at that time. So learned a lot uh, with that research. Still working on papers now based on the research that I did in my fellowship. But after that, I joined Ultimed, which that's where I'm at now. I'm the medical director of HIV prevention there, and our goal is really to spread awareness of HIV testing and prevention and linkage to care, and linkage to HIV treatment. So we teach all of our primary care providers about PrEP and post-exposure prophylaxis or PEP. We teach them what to do if their patient has HIV and is newly diagnosed, how to provide an inclusive and welcoming environment for their patients. And we're taking it one day at a time, one doctor at a time, one nurse at a time, and one patient at a time, so that we can really end the HIV epidemic, just like the national initiative right now.
You have such an inspiring story. And I wasn't. I'm going to ask you a question you're not expecting, and I remember I had a moment with you at the photo shoot where I said something like, "Hey, girl," and then I turned right around and I said to you, "Is that a microaggression?" And you said, "Well, I didn't take it that way." But the reason I asked myself and you right in the moment to own it was I try to pay attention to my own connection to racism and the things that I might do that show my own ignorance. And I looked at myself and said, well, why did I say that? Now, most of the Black women I know are fabulous, and if they're connected to the gay community, it would be a common way to greet somebody. But I probably wouldn't have walked up to you after a lecture and said, "Hey, girl." So I'm just looking at that, and I don't think there is a right answer or a wrong answer, but I certainly didn't meet any malice. But I appreciated that moment where I could just call myself on the inquiry about, was that a microaggression?
Yeah, that was a nice gesture. I've never had anyone ask me that before. I didn't think it was a microaggression at the time. We were all having fun together. If you had said that after a lecture, I would definitely think it were, a microaggression. But based on the context, it didn't really it didn't offend me at all.
Well, and I sort of, that's where it sat in my heart too. But I'm paying very close attention to myself all the time around these issues, and I do my best to have conversations about them when appropriate. So thank you for letting me have that additional moment with you in this broadcast. Is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't addressed?
I just want to add on to, the earlier conversation about all the new medications that are coming out, both to treat HIV and prevent HIV. We have an injectable HIV treatment and an injectable PrEP now. And it's really exciting to see how far we've come in treating and preventing HIV, and people can live long lives. Like you said earlier, I feel like there still is a misconception out there that HIV is a death sentence, and I'm really working with my team to get people up to date, because that's not true. And as we advance even further, I do feel like HIV vaccine is going to come in our lifetime, and I really sincerely hope that a cure will come in our lifetime. But the treatments are great, and there's always something new out there, and so it's really exciting to work in this field and to educate people who may not know all of these things, that there is so much out there now, that were not aware of. So it's really, I love what I do. I love working with my team, working in the communities that we serve in LA and Orange County. And, if you're ever interested in PrEP or PEP, contact me and I'll get you connected to care.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And Freddie's cheering you on, by the way, in the background. I can see him in the green room. He's hooting and hollering. Stay with me for a moment, because I'm doing that wonderful transition. I'm going to bring Danielle into the screen. Hi, Danielle. You're on mute as well. She's gonna unmute herself. That's the theme tonight. Oh, you're still mute. There we go. Hi.
We were just talking to ourselves. I was so excited. I'm like,
Hey.
Now you two know each other, right?
A long time.
Yes. I know you've referenced that, but I'm doing 17 things at once and 8 interviews. So, anything you want to say to each other while we all watch and listen?
I want you to be fabulous.
Oh, well, thank you, Danielle, for inviting me to be a part of the photo shoot. I really appreciate it.
Of course. I think it's
right,
good to have those diverse voices out. And as soon as Rick and I chatted about it, I was like, oh, let me call Alicia. She has to know. We have to have her there.
Well, thank you, Alicia. If you want to stay around for the Brady Bunch moment, it will happen right after Danielle, because no one else is in the queue. But I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, Danielle, I didn't mean to keep you waiting forever, but I'm so glad that
forever.
I know that we're talking. Sometimes I do 1 hour conversations with one person, and we're just over an hour, and we've had many people, and I think covering a lot of really important topics. So, we've learned a bit about you from other people that have addressed some of your inspiration for them. But what would you and Freddie is cheering you in the background, so you better. Him. Yeah. So, Danielle, what would you like to add about your connection to the fight against HIV and AIDS?
Oh my goodness, I'm knee deep in it. I think one sort of message that I walk away from these spaces is that I stand with you, I stand for you, I stand beside you from now until we find a cure. And so I sort of align my advocacy related work around all of those topics. So I'm very fluent in HIV prevention, HIV treatment, HIV cure, And all of my advocacy efforts center around those things, both here locally in the US and nationally and even globally.
You know, you mentioned globally, and I think that's a good, that it's a great time for us to address out loud the fact that this whole notion of privilege. So it's wonderful that all these treatments exist and preventions exist, but you have to have access to them. And access is privilege. And there's so many layers, socioeconomic and intersectionalities across the board that separate people from care.
Absolutely.
I'm a cis white male. I'm the last person in the world that should be making, should pretend to be an expert on what I just said. Everyone else here is really more powerful. But that's why I think it's really important that we do think globally, whether it's around LGBTQ civil rights, the fight against health inequities, all kinds of things.
Absolutely. I think, the first step is acknowledging your privilege. So I'm grateful to you for acknowledging your privilege in the space of other disprivileged people. If there's a word or a group of people who lack the same privilege that you have as a cis white man. And then I also wanted to thank you for providing this space for us to come together and tell our collective stories. Right? The title of the shoot was Together Apart, or something, a play on those words. And Rick is a publishing genius, right?
Apart but together.
Yeah.
Apart but together.
Right.
But together.
So he really did a phenomenal job at highlighting how each of us in our own respective advocacy lanes, whether it be the provider lane or, the run-of-the-mill advocate like myself, we are apart together in this work around HIV. Whether it be treatment, whether it be policy, whether it be planning, whether it be social justice related issues, as you mentioned, for LGBTIQIA plus people, we're, collectively in this fight to bring an end to these very onerous issues that people living with and affected by HIV face.
This isn't directly related to our conversation, but this is a live show and I have comments and there's someone that has asked a question and it's a learning opportunity because there's a misunderstanding that is evident, and I don't say this as an insult to the viewer, but we're going to answer his question. And I'm not going to put him on the screen because I don't want to out him at that level. But he or she, their name doesn't indicate a pronoun, but how can I get PrEP? 7 years post-AIDS diagnosis and being told I wouldn't live 6 months. I'm undetectable, but starting BTO date after 33 years. So I don't know what BTO means. Maybe you do. But I do know for a fact that PrEP is for HIV negative people to keep them HIV negative. So someone that's living with HIV would not qualify for PrEP.
That's correct. You hit the nail on the head there. So PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis, and the exposure being to HIV. So if you are a person living with HIV, then you would refocus and pivot to a conversation around treatment and medication adherence.
Exactly. So I just wanted to put that out there. So because you have the advantage of being last and you've listened to all these conversations, is there anything that you think that you would like to add to fill in any blanks or to expand on any points that have been addressed?
Oh my gosh, so much was addressed today. I think one prevailing theme throughout all of the conversations is that we all play a role in this work, right? And I think those are the ties that bind. We all do this work sometimes tirelessly for the greater good. And if I had to bring us all together or tie together all of the different, very fabulous conversations that you had together today, that would be it, right? HIV is a tie that binds, but it isn't something that ties us down, right? It's it's a kind source of grief for some, but it's also a source of inspiration and motivation and advocacy, right? We all do this work. We're great at it. And we wake up one day at a time to continue in the fight.
Well, that's just beautiful. So, Damone and Carlos, you want to turn your cameras back on if you want to be featured for our Brady Bunch moment. So Carlos is, and I'm gonna just start putting everyone on screen here. So we're gonna add Rick, we're gonna add Carlos, we're going to add Danielle and Dr. Moorhead and Freddie, and oh, Danielle. Oh, you know what? There's Danielle. And there's Damone. I don't think well, I know for a fact I've never had 7 people on screen at the same time.
We're fabulous.
Yes. And Carlos has done a costume change.
Yeah, I was just
I
gonna
saw.
mention that.
What is going on there? He's always doing
Yeah,
something.
he's showing
He
some
did that on the-
arms. I think he's headed
Yeah.
to a tea dance or something.
Oh my God. You didn't even have time to prepare.
And Carlos, let's actually before we wrap the show, I haven't really talked anything about my own story, and you may not really even know about it. So this series is inspired by my own book, which is called Life Positive. I meant to make myself full screen. It's called Life Positive, A Journey to the Center of My Heart. And it is a living powerfully with HIV memoir. And I'm just going to read a little bit. I'm not here to sell my book. It's just a really quick way to encapsulate my story in a few words. So, in Bangkok, Thailand, Hollywood's primo promo homo on the go-go, Nicholas Snow is eking out a modest living as a foreign correspondent, actor, and media personality when, in a moment of personal desperation, he makes a decision that changes his life forever. Decades into the AIDS pandemic and completely armed with the knowledge to protect himself, during a moment of passion with a man who is unaware of having HIV, Nicholas has a rare slip in his safer sex behavior and becomes HIV positive. What might have been the end of a lifetime of dreams turns out to be only the beginning of a remarkable journey that Nicholas himself chronicles in real time as he is living it. Part 12-step program, 4th step inventory, part reality show on paper. This is the painful yet triumphant saga of how Nicholas Snow uses his own mistake as an opportunity to empower millions of people throughout the world by disclosing not only his HIV status, but his spirit, experience, strength, and hope as well. From Hollywood to Bangkok to Bali and beyond, including Kuala Lumpur and Palm Springs, with profound expansion to Singapore, Mumbai, and throughout all of Asia, and ultimately in 21 languages across the globe, Life Positive, A Journey to the Center of My Heart could easily be called Eat, Pray, Disclose. So that kind of tells my story and what I did with it. And a decade later, PromoHomo.TV is about connecting the circuitry of humanity by creating programming for LGBTQ plus everyone. So with that, I want to give everyone the opportunity to make a closing remark. And I'm going to go to Dr. Moorhead first because we have some background noise that I know comes from your computer. And so I'm going to go with you first. What would you like to say in conclusion? And I'm going to actually keep our Brady Bunch view so we can all see each other when we're having this concluding moment.
Yes, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, at the photo shoot, Rick and Danielle. And, thank you to everyone. It was a pleasure meeting you all. And, if you ever need any medical advice, anyone watching, you can always hit me up on Twitter. I don't have a professional Instagram or Facebook, but thank you.
Well, thanks again for being here. It's been an honor to have you. And let's go to Carlos. You're on mute, but let's go to you next.
Sure. I would just like to say that doing this kind of work can absolutely, over time, just sort of wear you out, burn you out. But it's getting reconnected with folks like all of you that re-inspire that flame that was burning a little low sometimes. So I'm super thankful that this shared experience that we could come together on and fight for something that is for the better of all of us. So thank everyone here today for being here and for showing up and just for visibility and for just to support one another.
Well, thank you. It's been really fabulous. Let's go to you, Freddie. Center square. On my computer, you're center square. So,
Yes.
center square.
Yes. I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to be able to represent what my passion is, and any of you interested in clinical trials, we still need volunteers, and as Dr. Alicia said, there's a lot of new on the horizon, but we need your help. We also need your help to be part of these trials, to be able to get them approved so that it could be available for the masses. And there's a lot, because there's a lot of new advances, and so anybody that is interested, please contact me, and I'll be more than happy to walk you through if this is your first trial.
Well, thanks again, Freddie. Really great to have you here today. And I just remembered I can do this. So, Damone, I'm putting you in the center square. I can move you around. Now you're in the center square. And what would you like to say to conclude?
Definitely. What I can say is this is definitely a great work. Everyone that come together, there was a balance, there was representation, there was everyone come, and it was just love. And for me, over the years, I've been motivated by volunteerism, which led me to where I'm at today. And so, if you can volunteer to do something, then please volunteer, because it will pay off. I remember when I was just diagnosed, somebody said to me that volunteer, and I'm like, no, I don't want to volunteer. I don't have any job. I need money. Well, you're telling me to volunteer, but I couldn't get any job. So that's what led me to volunteer. And right now, I have this plethora of experience in the HIV
Who told you
community.
that, Mom?
My friend Ainsley Reed in Jamaica, and other
Oh,
friends here in Los Angeles, California, who I met, Danielle Campbell, I won't say her name, and other people. It's just great to have a community that you can get support and to build upon that. And because right now, I am so marketable to work anywhere or to go anywhere, and so I'm just grateful for that. And you heard it here first. My nonprofit organization, Ealing with O Corporation, will definitely be launching official, hopefully in June, to really start working with Caribbean immigrant and the faith community in Los Angeles County. And so there's so much work to be done, a lot more work to be done. And so I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful to be able to be a voice of hope and to represent. So thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Damone. Thank you so much for being here. And we're going to put Danielle in the center square.
oh. So, God, there's so much to say. I've had the privilege of listening to each of you give your stories here, and it really just keeps me grounded and gives me hope to know that I'm not in this work alone. Right? I have a dynamic group of advocates at my disposal, and they all showed up. They all showed up in spectacular form to lend their voices to this cover, and I'm grateful to you all. It is your energy that keeps me going in this fight. So thank you for every role that each of you play, for every hour that you give to this work. And I wanted to express my sincerest gratitude to Damone for sharing his story, and let him know how proud I am of him for moving forward with his 501c3 after what feels like an eternity. Okay. And Freddie, I love you.
That's
That is
fantastic.
all.
We're having a love fest. Rick, don't go anywhere because you're going to be in the center square in a moment. But I'm putting myself in the center square. And then I'm going to bring up the magazine cover again because I would like to acknowledge people that were in the shoot that did not join the broadcast. So, second from left is Oliver Wong. Second from left on the front cover. And being public about his status helped him overcome isolation and stigma. Diagnosed barely a year ago, he's made it a part of his shtick as a stand-up comedian. He talks about being HIV positive, and he shares that it helps me to share my experience on stage. It's very therapeutic, empowering, and freeing to talk about it. If you're living with HIV and turn your experience into art and share it with the world, it's going to not only help you, but also the world understand HIV and remove stigma. If you're newly diagnosed, it's important to talk with someone who's been living with HIV for a longer time, he says. Hearing firsthand experiences from a long-term survivor can give you assurance that HIV is manageable. Wow, that's really powerful stuff. Now, can I have all of your support in helping me recognize anyone else that we haven't talked about that wasn't on the show but is on this cover?
Dawn.
What
Dawn
about, what about
McLendon.
Dawn?
Yes, of
Don
course.
and the photographer.
Yes.
Yes.
So Mark Harvey is a visual artist, designer, photographer, and educator living in Los Angeles. He teaches a variety of topics in graphic design and photography at the Art Center, Pasadena City College, Glendale College, and at Los Angeles City College. And Dawn is just, I want to place her correctly. She is third from right. Third from the right of this photo, and a young single mother of two struggling to work and to go to school. Dawn P Mclendon shifted gears from becoming a lawyer to promoting public health and to promoting public and to become a part of something larger than herself. Now 48, she is assistant director of the Los Angeles County Commission on HIV. Quote, I am eternally changed by the relationships I have built with people living with and impacted by HIV, as well as those who are a part of this workforce. And I am forever grateful, she says. And I am forever grateful for all of you. And as I mentioned, this network is about connecting the circuitry of humanity. And now and forevermore, we're connected because of this magazine cover and now this episode. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I'm going to give it to you, Rick, for a last word to take us out.
Thank you, Nicholas. Well, it's been a privilege to have met everyone here, all of you, and for you to make your story a part of what's in the drug guide. Anyone who picks up the drug guide is looking for something. They're looking for information, sure, but what they're more fundamentally looking for is reassurance that everything will be okay. The information that's in the drug guide helps with that, but having these stories in the drug guide with that information, I think offers the best assurance that things are going to be okay and that this is the start.
Beautifully
So,
stated.
my thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
So thank you.
I'm gonna play a closing video, but as soon as it's over, those of you who stay can speak to each other candidly for some post-show green room moments if you want to stay for that. And I'll see some of you in a moment, and I'll see all of my viewers next time. Thank you for watching what I feel is a historic episode of Life Positive on PromoHomo.TV.